and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who's always good company with a K. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I feel like you start out with a pun just to see if I get annoyed up front, and the answer is yes, I have. Well done.
Not annoying was the game of soccer.
Not even a little bit.
We came in to watch today. It was Manchester City hosting Liverpool at the... Actually, not at the top two of the Premier League, right? Though they are now.
Yes.
At the Etihad. Spoiler alert, obviously, if you listen to this, I'm assuming you've seen the game.
Yeah. Weird choice if you haven't.
Yeah, it finished 2-1 to Manchester City, and it was a very enjoyable afternoon of soccer.
It certainly was.
US Eastern Time.
I know that we're not the first ones, or I'm not the first one to point this out, but it was refreshing to see two very good teams play pretty good soccer. There was definitely some sloppiness to it, which I think was more nerves than anything else, because it was
tactics. We'll get into the tactics.
Sure, but I think it was a very nervy occasion, and so that both teams rose to it. And
you kept saying adrenaline. A lot of adrenaline in this game.
It was mostly just that it was a lot of passes fired at people, and it was usually a little bit of a sloppy touch to receive it. There was one where Liverpool maintained possession in the first half, and they had 5 kind of bad passes in a row, but still managed to attack through it. And so I think that was, again, that's the story, is being able to play through nerves and trying to find a way to win. I think that's what made this game so captivating to me.
Oh, and obviously it was important because going into this, how many points clear were Liverpool of Manchester City?
6,000, I believe.
6,000.
If you listen to all of the pre-match coverage about how the title race was probably over, I believe they were 7 points ahead.
7 points ahead, and now they're 4 points ahead. It really does feel different, right? It could have been a 10-point gap.
Yeah.
Instead, it's only a 4-point gap.
I mean, we're not going to get too much into the post-match stuff, but you could see that NBC Sports did a good job of pointing that out. That Vincent Kompany was trying to make jokes with Virgil van Dijk. That wasn't happening. It definitely...
Van Dijk was not in the mood for company.
No, he was not. Well done. That one's good. I'll give you that one. But it definitely looked for all the world like a team that recognized that they maybe could have put too much distance or an insurmountable distance between them and their main challenger. Now things are a little bit more up in the air.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk tactics. Because I found especially the first half of this really more interesting than exciting, if that makes sense. And then things really opened up tactically and kind of literally and went a bit more end-to-end as the game went on. And I want to start with what Liverpool did.
Sure.
The big switch going away to Manchester City in a game that in many ways was must not lose more than must win, right? A draw would have been a great result for Liverpool. They went away from I call it a 4-2-3-1 that they've been playing. Klopp calls it a 4-4-1-1.
Of course he does.
They went back to the 4-3-3, and it mostly worked.
It did.
Until it didn't in the 39th, 40th minute.
Yeah, there's that. But I would say that, the thing that I found really interesting about that is that we know Guardiola for these big games, these massive games, either in the Champions League or when it comes down to league final run-ins, that he can maybe overthink a little bit. He can maybe tinker too much. And I believe firmly that there was no way he thought this was going to happen, because Liverpool, really, all they needed was a draw. They would have been content with a draw. A win would have been ideal. And so I think with that comes maybe an expectation that they're going to play more defensively, that they will go 4-2-3-1. And so I have to believe that Guardiola was ready for that.
I would say 4-2-3-1 is more attacking.
Really?
Yeah, I think the 4-3-3 is more defensive.
I think just keeping those two holding midfielders back, it just means that you're going to keep two people further back, which means, in my mind, that you're not going to commit as many numbers further forward to try to win that ball.
But you keep the two defensive midfielders back, you send the two fullbacks much, much higher, which is literally what happened with Liverpool's equalising goal.
And that was when they were chasing, is my point. Yeah. That's when they were kind of unleashing the team a bit
that's
more.
The more attacking. Oh, you're saying it's not so much the formation as it is the game state or the game situation.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, well, despite the shape then, the shape they set up in, the 4-3-3, the approach was, from Liverpool, let's clog things, don't let Manchester City play through, right? So the very simple setup of let the centre-backs, let Stones and Vincent Kompany have the ball. Firmino would essentially just make sure that there was no clear line of sight to Fernandinho, and then Salah and Mane on the wings would make sure there was no clear line of sight to the fullbacks. And then the midfield three would essentially just hold steady in central midfield, and there's no way through for Manchester City.
Exactly.
Until there was.
But yeah, and I think a key point in differentiating between when there was and when there wasn't is also that it was Mane and Salah, as you said, kind of marking out those fullbacks and basically forcing them to drop further deep, and that I think Liverpool were more okay with, because then it's kind of lateral passing in their own, in City's own defensive third, but then you can step and put pressure on. And so I think you did see that a few times, the Liverpool or the City fullbacks kind of pulling almost back, and I think, again, that was what Liverpool wanted out of this game. It was working, it's just individual moments caused problems.
And it certainly wasn't the full-on, gegenpress, heavy metal football and all that, right? It was much more conservative, and I think was based on, if there's a mistake, then we'll pounce, then we'll press and win the ball.
Yeah.
Or maybe we'll have some nice combinations and Mohamed Salah will shake off Bernardo Silva. That's what they did to have that one really good chance that nearly went over the line. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But that's how they opened them up just that one time, right?
Sure. And then can we flip it around for a sec, or do you want to talk more about Liverpool?
I feel like I've talked enough, so maybe you should talk about Man City's setup to start the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was surprising to begin with, but then not surprising because it seems like they had some injuries to deal with. We're not quite sure why Kyle Walker didn't play. I think that was said a bunch of different times, but neither one of us ever wrote it down.
It's been suggested that maybe he's not been in great form the last few games. I will say when I first saw the lineups, my go-to for lineups is to just Google, and Google will give you those cards of the lineups. They had John Stones at right back. And I was like, whoa, nope. Guardiola's maybe overthought this.
It's a gamble.
That is not how it went down.
It is not how it went down. Instead, it was Aymeric Laporte at left back. It was John Stones and Vincent Kompany, the twice aforementioned.
Which I think is in hindsight, especially when you think of his involvement in at least one of the goals and some a really good performance, except for that one thing with Salah that we'll talk about later, I think is the correct decision by Pep Guardiola.
Yeah? I would
trust
agree.
The experience.
And I think maybe also trusting him on the ball and then in the air. Obviously, he's a very big figure when it comes to attacking set pieces, but also if your game plan is maybe to frustrate Liverpool and force them into direct balls, which I do think City did pretty successfully, then you've got Kompany there to battle with Salah, win those headers, cause problems there. Danilo, the other one we haven't mentioned, at right back.
Laporte was at left back because Fabien Delph was suspended, right? I'm going to say Laporte did really well.
He absolutely did.
Yeah?
I mean, and we can talk about him more when we get to the goals. But yes, I thought he deputized very well. He did not look too out of sorts after the first 15 minutes or so. Not that he even looked that bad in the first 15. Just definitely a few growing pains. There was one where he passes the ball straight out of bounds. I think because he's used to being in the middle and not on the touchline. And then it was essentially midfield 3 and 3 up front. You had Fernandinho kind of sitting deeper than the two Silvas on either side of him, who were a bit more advanced, but
the two Silvas
intermittently dropped in. It's just easier to go that way. And then you have that kind of front 3 with Sané and Sterling wide with Aguero up top. But also kind of dropping in and moving around. There's a lot of fluidity to the attack from Man City.
Aguero was very fluid.
He certainly was. But the thing that I thought was very interesting was it went back to do you remember when Guardiola was so focused on playing out of the back from goal kicks that even when the other team was fully pressed all the way up on the 18,
that's
they
how
still
Liverpool
did it.
Destroyed them in the Champions League last season.
There were moments of that, I feel like, in this game. Because I do think Liverpool almost, not necessarily wanted them to play through Fernandinho because he's so good for them, but it felt like it was still a risk when City would play to him because everybody would collapse on him so fast.
Yeah.
And a lesser player, if they're holding onto that ball, you get destroyed on a counterattack. And instead it was really quick 1 and 2 touch passing from Fernandinho almost every single time that then allows them to kind of redirect, switch the point of attack. And it did, for the most part, keep Liverpool having to adjust rather than really succumbing to that pressure. There are moments when it worked. There are moments when City's pressure worked. But I felt like that was kind of key, is still finding Fernandinho whenever they could, but then not necessarily always relying on him and not being afraid to look for the feet of Sergio Aguero running into the channels either.
Or to find Leroy Sané, which is eventually... So even though Liverpool had that 4-3-3 shape, which I thought was quite effective, and I think whenever Fernandinho did get it, like you were talking about, he actually did really well to get out of pressure because Liverpool made it really hard for him. And I think it's a measure of Fernandinho that he was able to not be completely swallowed by this whole thing. Right?
Yep. You understand why, going back to our transfer show, why it's going to be so difficult to find a deputy/replacement.
And I'm just thinking of it in my head, Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah never really pulled wide. So they're always somewhat central. Firmino's there. Jordan Henderson was willing to charge forward and close Fernandinho down. So he's got it coming from 4 sides.
Yeah.
And he still managed to never, unless I've missed something, he never got sort of dispossessed and Liverpool go on the counter.
Not that I recall, or at least not
even once.
Not to a major extent. No, and I think if anything, then when they would get into the feet of Fernandinho, it was almost the last thing Liverpool wanted, because even though they're breaking on him, there were moments where I remember Jordan Henderson had to sprint out 10 yards to try to put him under pressure. Yeah. But then Fernandinho just played a quick 1-2, and now suddenly they found space. And so it felt like he was so important to what City were trying to do, which is essentially not get countered upon.
I have a controversial opinion, which I'm not sure if you share or not. We've talked about it a little bit. David Silva was subbed out of this game. And I know the NBC Sports commentators were not very impressed with his performance. I think he actually has a key role in, at the very least, the first goal and in Manchester City's sort of tactical shape, because he kept sneaking in behind Liverpool's three midfielders and being almost like the extra guy that would cause overloads, especially down Man City's left and Liverpool's right.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I would still say that the commentators were correct in that moment because we've done it, that when you're commentating live, you're sort of focusing on what's going on the ball.
Yeah.
And you maybe aren't as focused on the kind of 30 yards away, slow run to try to pull people out of position.
You're saying we got to watch it twice and they didn't.
I mean, it's that, but it's also like, I think this goes back to a disagreement we had about like Bobby Wood many years ago, that like you definitely can see a player who's just making really good runs and be like, yeah, he had a good game. He made good runs. And for me, just because they made good runs or occasionally made good runs doesn't necessarily mean they had a good game. So he had a better game than they said.
You set a higher bar.
I think so. But maybe you just you set a more artistic bar. Either way, it's worth noting that I think what you're getting at, though, is that some of the runs from David Silva are like factors in what eventually leads to the City goal.
So Liverpool have got their shape. They're not really letting Man City attack at all. But eventually, the Aguero goal, the Man City goal, comes from a period of Liverpool defensive panic that lasts about 30 seconds, right? It has a couple of Man City goals in it. But the initial breakdown of Liverpool comes because David Silva has occupied Trent Alexander-Arnold and allowed Leroy Sané to sort of go unmarked out on the left wing.
Yeah.
This is where it all starts. It's probably 45 seconds before the actual goal.
And not to go like even further back, but it even starts with Vincent Kompany playing that like packing stat of like 4. We think it's a really good ball into the feet of Leroy Sané on the touchline, and it's Sané checking in. So that's why he's created a little bit of space from Trent Alexander-Arnold, David Silva's presence being the other. So he's of two minds. And I think it's really obvious that Trent Alexander is of two minds because he then goes out wide to deal with Sané. Sané drops the ball back to Danilo. Laporte, excuse me. It's Danilo for the second. Laporte for this one. And I think Trent Alexander-Arnold at that point is sort of, well, I was with Silva, but then I was with Sané. Now Laporte has the ball. I'm just going to kind of stand up and try to block out the channel. Yeah,
I think he's hoping he's just preventing them playing the ball down the line. I think he forgot that we're not playing no head height.
Yeah, exactly.
You can clip the ball down up and over his head and into Leroy Sané.
Yes, and at that point then it's Sané versus Dejan Lovren. Ooh. I now better understand...
It's not even a contest, is it?
No, but I understand better why Liverpool fans were so concerned with the injuries to Joe Gomez and Joel Matip that... I remember thinking like, oh, Lovren was great for Croatia. What are you guys talking about? No, I get it. Because he's beaten for pace here.
In a way that Gomez would not have been.
No. And it's harsh to say because I think Lovren was kind of doing what he was expected to be doing. He was tracking David Silva. He was trying to do his defensive job. Then he ends up in a foot race with Leroy Sané. That's never fun for him. And then it is, there's bouncing around. It's Raheem Sterling dribbles. His shot is kind of headed clear. Then it's collected by Bernardo Silva. He does some dribbling, squares it. Sergio Aguero there to take a touch and then rocket home a volley.
Can we talk about Aguero's role in this goal?
Let's talk about a lot of things here because this is the other part of it. So it definitely starts with that ball from Laporte. It's great movement. But then I'm going to say it's Pep Guardiola's slavish dedication to detail that leads to this goal. Yeah,
so Silva goes to the end line eventually, dribbles to the end line, does not look up, and just does what I'm going to call the Manchester City cutback. We saw Benjamin Mendy do this a bunch last season. I think whenever someone goes down the wing for Man City, the most likely result is that the Manchester City player is going to cut it back to roughly the penalty area. Sorry, roughly the penalty spot.
And in this case, as you spotted, I think, that is where Leroy Sané is standing.
Yeah.
So that would emphasize, that's what they're looking for. It's why Bernardo Silva, if you watch, he never really picks his head up once he's dribbling.
Because he knows where it's going. He knows his teammates knows where it's going. So why do you even need to look?
Exactly.
You can fly blind, basically, if you all know where the destination is.
And especially if you have a crafty...
Someone tell Sandra Bullock.
If you have a crafty veteran like Sergio Aguero, who also knows where that ball is going to go, because in the moments before this, he definitely dives, but not enough for it to be a bookable, like, call it back, we'll do a free kick offense. But it's like Virgil van Dijk kind of touches his shoulder, Aguero goes down and complains, everybody else adjusts. But to your earlier point, I think because this is kind of in a state of Liverpool getting caught out and sort of everybody's transitioning and kind of running around, heads cut off a little bit, I think that does factor into this because both the center backs step forward, they push the line out, but they're really focused on their individual marks or the ball coming in, not focused on the fact that Sergio Aguero gets up, gets back onside, and then I think recognizes that no one has noticed that he is now back up and onside.
Yeah, especially not Dejan Lovren, because he is, I mean, to be fair to Lovren, Aguero standing directly behind him and he's shorter than him, so he's not in his field of view at all. So then Aguero can just dart in front of him as Silva does that cutback that everybody knows is coming if you're wearing a sky blue shirt. That's how he's able to essentially get the jump on Dejan Lovren.
Yes. Yeah? One thing that you've just kind of maybe inadvertently connected, and maybe I'm going too deep, but that is kind of our domain here, is that it's Lovren. The reason why he's maybe not as aware of Aguero is because he's constantly checking Leroy Sané, and that does make me wonder if he also has been told they're going to cut it back. Be ready for that cutback. Be aware of where the person is that they're aiming for on the cutback. And so Dejan Lovren is looking at Leroy Sané, not aware that Sergio Aguero is right behind him, and that's why that dart works so well.
Klopp's prepared them correctly.
It's possible.
But that Sergio Aguero, this is what I was talking about with his fluidity, is that essentially he's in like a pool on the floor.
Yeah.
Like he's melted, but then he pops back up ready.
Yeah. I mean, it is a move that we would expect of Luis Suarez. I'll put it that way. And I mean that because it's a little bit of acting, it's a little bit of theatricality, but then it's a lot of awareness and like laser quick instincts to get on the end of that ball and then technical ability to finish.
I feel like we're going through this game chronologically, and since it's half time, maybe now is a good time for a snack or an ad break, or in this case, both.
Well done. That's well done. Is that because today's sponsor is RX Bar?
RX Bar, they're back.
They're back.
Welcome back, RX Bar. We've re-signed them to a new contract.
Yes. It was definitely us. They had to petition. It was something like that.
The fans wanted it. RX Bar is a whole food protein bar. That means they're made with real whole ingredients. None of the nonsense that's in certain other protein bars, naming no names. Actually, literally naming no names. Don't want to get in any legal trouble.
We do not. And that means you've got the core ingredients on the front. You can see exactly what those are. You flip it over and you've got, like, I'm going to call them the specialty ingredients, the ones that give you the additional flavor, the different types of flavors. But you've got the kind of like the dates, the cashews. It's all right there, so you can see. To the point where I showed my mom this when I was with her over Christmas, and she kind of kept flipping the package back and forth, being like, "Okay, but like where's the rest of it? Like, I don't get it." Because she was so used to the usual granola bars, she wasn't ready for a thing that was just like, "No, it's like 8 ingredients. That's it."
Where's the filler? And you're like, "No, Mom, it's all killer."
Yeah, that's right. No fillers, gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, no artificial colors, artificial flavors, preservatives, or, as Daryl said, fillers.
And we don't just walk the walk and talk the talk here on the Total Soccer Show. We eat the eat.
I was wondering what you were going to do with it. We do indeed eat
the eat. We are
Yep.
RX Bar consumers. When we have them in the office, we like them so much that we've eaten them all. There are none left in the office.
Many times over.
There may be an empty box over my...
There's a box of instant oatmeal. That's what we have left.
Okay, there's no more RX Bars.
We need to make a run to the store.
If anyone from RX Bar is listening, we would happily accept another complimentary shipment.
You're darn right we would. I would take a mango pineapple. I would... what else would I take? The chocolate mint is
that's a good choice.
Favorite of mine. I do enjoy... I want to check out their seasonal flavors. I know that's an option. Like, I want to know, is that seasonal right now? Is that like candy cane? Because that seems like it would have some artificial stuff in it.
We may be post-seasonal now.
Yeah,
we may be post-seasonal. They wouldn't do candy cane because it's not a real ingredient, right?
They would do
mint,
things basically. It's just mint.
Chocolate sea salt, because those are real things.
There you go. Exactly. Candy canes are real things. They're just not good things.
RX Bar also has RX Nut Butter, which is not the same as the regular RX Bar, but it's still a few simple, similar ingredients like egg whites, fruits, and nuts. And if you would like to get 25% off your first order of RX Bars, 25% off your first order of the bestseller variety pack, please visit rxbar.com/soccer. Should be easy to remember. rxbar.com/soccer. And enter the promo code SOCCER at checkout. That's valid in the US only and for a limited time for 25% off your first order of the bestseller variety pack.
In your face, Canada. No delicious RX bars for you. Only for us and for our listeners. And speaking of our listeners, we should get back to talking to them about the City-Liverpool game,
all right, Pud Happy, let's do that. All right, so it was 1-0
the story of this game is that it happened.
It was 1-0 at half-time to Manchester City. Interestingly, the teams came out the exact same setup for the second half. And I think Jurgen Klopp did that thing of give it 10 minutes, then the big changes come in, right? Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Because, in the 57th minute, that's when... I think you're right with the 10 minutes. He was probably started filling out the paperwork in the 55th.
Yeah. But you've got to wait for a throw-in or you've got to wait for the opportunity to present itself, right?
Fabinho comes on, James Milner goes off, and you have the... I think you spotted that Fabinho runs on and almost clearly says like 4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
It sort of was like, okay, so you all are changing.
And then he's telling people where to go and what to do. I think he tells Sadio Mane to go to the right wing. He tells Wijnaldum to go to the left wing. And you end up with what's become the classic Liverpool shape of Mohamed Salah as the farthest forward central striker, Firmino underneath him, and then weirdly Wijnaldum and Mane to the left and right because there's no Shaqiri, at least for a little while, and Fabinho, and at this point it's got to be Jordan Henderson sitting, right?
Yeah.
We had a disagreement earlier that I really think this is a more attacking formation. It's why Liverpool have been destroying teams for the past few weeks, because once you do that, because you've got the two defensive midfielders sitting just in front of the two centre-backs, the fullbacks can always get much, much farther forward. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson get much, much farther forward.
I mean that was the thing we spotted like almost instantly with this sub, is that you have the holding midfielders almost dropping in between the two center backs. The center backs go to where the fullbacks were. The fullbacks push higher up the field. I think what I mean is more so that in my mind, naturally a 4-2-3-1 is a more defensive shape than a 4-3-3.
Depends. It's what you do that counts.
That's what I'm saying. And so I think I'm with you here because we did not see nearly as much from Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold in the first half as we did in the second.
Yeah.
And as you already said, it is, I mean, even in the moment before the goal, we have Trent Alexander-Arnold playing a long diagonal to Andy Robertson that gets recycled, and then it happens again.
Yes, it does. So there's actually really not that much to say about this goal, right? Except that it's that weird left-footed Alexander-Arnold cross from the right.
Except that we did say earlier that the only maybe mistake from Vincent Kompany was the potential red card that he got a yellow card for. It is him who loses Roberto Firmino here because he is 100% just ball watching.
Yeah, is it because it's just such a weird left-footed ball that comes in from TAA?
Yeah, that might be part of it because we watched it again to try to figure out because Kompany makes a play to step in front of Firmino when that ball is coming in.
They have a bit of a tangle, don't they?
They do, but like it's at no point did this cross look like it was being driven in like low into the near post. So I don't know why Kompany makes that play, and I especially don't know why because then he is sort of like in the wrong position to make up any ground on Firmino, and I think because it goes over top, he then almost switches off and is sort of like, oh, the ball's at the back post. I wonder where it's going to go. I need to adjust to it, and then doesn't even notice that Roberto Firmino has drifted to the far post.
I think the expression on his face is more like, well, that's weird.
Yeah. What?
You know what I mean?
He's got a left foot?
Yeah.
We didn't drill for this. We drilled for everything else but this possibility.
Well done to Andy Robertson for getting that ball back across onto, is it Firmino's head in the end? Yeah.
I think so, at least. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's like a maybe not necessary diving header, but either way, it's in the back of the net.
It's like it's the equivalent of the no-look, but you can't do a no-look diving header.
Yeah, and it's, I would say, a reward for Roberto Firmino, who is another player maybe more so than David Silva because he gets the goal, who I bet if you went back and watched this game, we would be incredibly impressed with everything Roberto Firmino did, especially because he has to literally change position and change everything he's doing. But I don't remember him like having the type of game where it's like, oh, he gave it away again. Oh, he missed a chance. Oh, he didn't do this. I feel like it was probably a good game from Roberto Firmino, but maybe even a better game than that if you watched again.
Here's the interesting thing. Pep Guardiola, who we all think of as, tactical leader.
Chess match.
Everyone's reacting to what Guardiola's doing. At this point, Guardiola brings on, Ilkay Gundogan? I've forgotten who for. Who does Gundogan come on for?
Gundogan comes on for David Silva. And it's worth noting that it's not even just like, oh, it's a couple minutes later he decides to change it up. It's literally as we cut back from the replay, the commentator frantically says, like, oh, and Ilkay Gundogan's on the field.
It's like the kickoff after they concede, right?
Yeah.
Guardiola has seen what Klopp's done with the 4-2-3-1, and he's decided the only way to match this is to literally match it and adopt the exact same formation. So you end up with Gundogan and Fernandinho sitting 4-2-3-1, exactly the same, right? Yeah. And it's Bernardo Silva underneath Aguero.
Yeah. And then it's maybe not quite exactly the same in terms of like that this ball eventually comes from Danilo is kind of the ball into Sterling that leads to the goal for City.
The winner, yeah.
But it's not quite as far forward as Trent Alexander-Arnold was, but it's still the fact that I think once you have the more numbers in the middle, it gives you that freedom if you're the wide defender to be more aggressive in getting forward.
Here's my contention. I think Jurgen Klopp did it was a great idea to change from the 4-3-3 to the 4-2-3-1, get those fullbacks higher, all that sort of stuff. Once you've got the equaliser, the game was far too wide open, right? Which is worth doing because you've got to gamble when you're losing. Once the equaliser was achieved, I think in hindsight, if Klopp could do this again, he might then retreat back into that more compact 4-3-3 and shut this thing down.
I mean, in hindsight, given that they lost, I'm sure he would. What I would say to that is, and like I'm not saying this is even necessarily correct, but this is my read on it, is that I think more often than not when you're going to do those types of changes, when you're shifting from a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-3-3 or back or whatever, it usually revolves around a substitute. That you bring on a new player, and then that player fills a new spot, everybody else adjusts around it. And I think it's a little bit harder just to do on the fly, to just be screaming and to do it discreetly. And so...
Because it would have had to be... Because I was calling for this at the time. It would have had to be Wijnaldum would have had to come, stop playing left wing and go join Fabinho and Henderson and be a third midfielder.
Or he would have had to burn a sub. And I think that's the thing, is that he probably didn't want to burn a sub at that point.
He may not even have had another midfielder to bring on.
Yeah, that could be too. So I think that maybe is why I would say he doesn't do it. And it's always difficult
Klopp
to change.
Knows more than me. He was right.
No, but I think you're right. He probably would change it knowing the result now. I just think I have a little bit more understanding of why he maybe didn't want to do that. And maybe he also just didn't think that Guardiola shifting to the exact same formation was going to work the way it did.
Yeah.
And really, maybe it starts with Ederson being Ederson, because he has a few moments in this game where one of them we went back and watched a whole bunch. We'll talk about in a little bit. Not quite as much his fault as I thought, but he didn't look that confident coming off his line to collect the ball in the air.
Yeah.
On the ground, on the other hand, very different story because basically City's goal comes from a through ball played in for Mohamed Salah that isn't even a bad ball. It's just that Ederson is off his line so fast. He gets it 25, 30 yards from his own goal
if
and
anything,
plays it really quickly.
He should have been sent off for denial of a goal-scoring opportunity.
Jokes.
Is that not how that works?
I'm not sure. I'm sure Liverpool fans would agree.
It is worth pointing out, though, that Liverpool are stretched out at this point because they've essentially tried to counter Man City, right? Because don't they tackle Leroy Sané?
They win the ball back in midfield,
and then Wijnaldum immediately plays that ball, but then Sadio Mane is charged forward down the right, and then because Ederson intercepts, plays it to Danilo, and then away we go. Liverpool is stretched out, Man City counter-attack them. So it's a counter from Man City.
And it's also probably Liverpool, again, it's the same thing as the first goal where they're a little bit discombobulated because of that counter, and that's why if you watch, the first thing they do after the goal is cut to the wide shot where you can see the full offside line, and it is a fairly jagged offside line for what they're trying to do, and that's why Raheem Sterling is onside in the first place, is because Dejan Lovren is about a yard deeper than Virgil van Dijk.
Yeah, he made a weird decision to run sort of sideways. Yeah. To catch someone offside.
Yeah.
I think he got horizontal and vertical mixed up.
It wasn't real smart. And it's also, I can't tell if this is clever work from Danilo or clever work from Raheem Sterling, but the other key aspect of this sequence is that Sterling is in an onside position but sort of checks to, almost feints to, and Andy Robertson tries to cut off that pass.
Can you explain what that means? Because there may be people who don't know what you mean by check
It's basically instead of moving away from the ball when Danilo is dribbling towards Raheem Sterling, he moves towards Danilo to make himself a more viable passing option. But because that pass doesn't come, Andy Robertson tries to make a play on it and is basically now moving away from his own goal while Raheem Sterling stays where he is and stays onside and now has 5 yards of space between himself and the closest defender.
Maybe he was gambling on Dejan Lovren doing the crab legs.
That would make sense. Or just not paying attention. Maybe that too.
So then it's Danilo into Sterling, and then Sterling goes on one of those Sterling dribbles.
He sure does.
He drives. It's like a diagonal drive.
Yeah, and he had a few of these. He had a few really close dribbles where you sort of have that moment of oh, right, he's really good. Because he does have the weird sort of raptor-y T-Rex run about him.
The short arms.
Yeah, and so
arms.
it makes him look almost disarming because you're like, oh, a person who has weird dinosaur arms, he can't be that fast, and then he blows by you with the ball at precision control.
Right, because when you think of someone sprinting, you do when I picture a sprinter, it's arms at full extension, right? Yeah.
Yep, not here.
It works for him.
It does, and it certainly worked here.
What if he's secretly twice as fast if only he sorted his arms out?
I was about to say, I wonder what would happen. But we don't even need to worry about it because instead he does just what he does and then he gets assists because he dribbles through the middle, as you said. And it also felt like because now suddenly Andy Robertson cut out, not necessarily through his own fault, Dejan Lovren keeping people onside. Again, it's Liverpool kind of everybody in a state of flux. And so nobody is thinking, okay, it's my job to step and do this, or it's my job to sort of make sure that this play doesn't happen. And so everybody is sort of adjusting and showing Sterling across. But no one, I felt like, is really trying to make a decisive play. Yeah. And that's why he's then able to play it in diagonally for Leroy Sané.
And doesn't he release it just as people are converging around him?
I think
that's a sign of a really top level players. Once the pressure is going to become so much that you're going to run into a wall of players, that's when you release it, because then you know that if they're all around you, then they're not all around him. Him being Leroy Sané. Here's my question: why was Leroy Sané open?
I think a big part of it is because of the formation change for Liverpool and that they didn't adjust. We saw Klopp at least once to Sadio Mane saying, it seemed like his instructions from his gestures were, once we get that ball, you go forward aggressively. Go. And so I think it was still the brief to the front three, front four, whatever, was when we get that ball, go. And so Sadio Mane, a number of times in the minutes before this goal, was doing the same thing. And so he now is 40 yards up the field, 30 yards up the field. Leroy Sané, as you said, gets tackled, dispossessed, and he kind of throws his hands up. But as a result, he's not sprinting back. I'm not sure that was even his job, but he's now at midfield. Sadio Mane is 30 yards away, and that's the closest person.
Trent Alexander-Arnold have him?
You would think so, except I believe Trent Alexander-Arnold is marking other runners and has come more narrow at this point because he's now, again, he's kind of scrambling and trying to keep his head on a swivel. I think he might be paying attention to Aguero as well.
Yeah.
And so because of that, he sort of is outnumbered on that far side, which was a thing that happened kind of consistently, as you said, when David Silva was there, but even when he went off, it was still sort of Trent Alexander-Arnold having to shuttle inside, but then get outside really quickly to put out fires.
And so obviously Sané drives down, hits a great shot. I think hits the post, then goes across and into the other side netting, gets a little scrape off the bottom of Alexander-Arnold's boot.
Which does factor into it because it keeps that ball low. It doesn't keep it maybe a foot or two off the ground, and it does direct it further away from Alisson into the goal.
Oh, okay, this might be slightly controversial, but I wonder if, when you look back at this game, is Trent Alexander-Arnold's still defensive inexperience ever so slightly to blame.
Yeah,
like maybe a more experienced right back, a more experienced player doesn't let that the foot for the first goal doesn't get beat over his head and get Leroy Sané in behind. Does a more experienced player on the second goal call someone else over to mark? I've forgotten who he was marking, and then make sure that he can go out and be aware of the threat of Leroy Sané. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm less inclined to blame him for the second goal just because of why I went into such detail with Sadio Mane is because I think Mane's far up the field. I don't know who he would have yelled at to make sure they drop in and help him cover, except for Dejan Lovren, who himself is scrambling. And so the reason why I say yes so quickly is just because City are so good, as they demonstrated in this game. If you switch off and just forget your obligation for 1 second, that's all it takes for them to get in behind.
Yeah.
And so even though we've mentioned Dejan Lovren a lot more in a lot more negative ways,
he was more posterized.
But it also feels like his mistakes, despite being posterized, the one time that he really seemed like he was at fault, he actually kind of wasn't at fault. And I would say the other mistakes were sort of like, oh, he didn't do this, oh, he wasn't quite fast. But those are all things we know. Whereas that one switch off from Trent Alexander-Arnold, maybe it is sort of a big game. He knows what's on the line. Yeah. He grew up a Liverpool fan. That factors into things a little bit.
It's almost just like...
I'm assuming he grew up a Liverpool fan, actually. I don't know that for sure.
He grew up in Liverpool. So
probably,
Unless we have a Jamie Carragher situation.
You never know.
I think Michael Owen. Either way, thinking about this again, maybe it's that Trent Alexander-Arnold was put in semi-impossible situations and a more experienced player just finds a way to split the difference and deal with those semi-impossible situations.
Yep.
But TAA is not quite there yet and able to deal with that.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, it is.
'Cause I'm a big fan of him.
Yeah, I mean, I am too, and he makes up for it to some extent. I mean, obviously it happens after the fact, or no, it doesn't. He makes up for it to some extent with that assist or the assist for the assist.
MLS assist.
So he is
partly American, right? So he gets an MLS assist.
Let's get him in there. Let's just see what happens. Even though he's very much cap tied to England, let's just try. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so it finishes 2-1 to Manchester City, but it really could have gone another way. There are two big moments, right? I want to start with the least controversial one, which is the John Stones clearance into the back of Ederson's head and then...
His hands. He closed it into his hands because Ederson's going back to try to catch it.
And then John Stones' clearance off the line, which looked for all the world like it was definitely a goal. When you see the goal line technology, you can see there is, was it 1.1 centimetres?
1.12, you got it.
1.12 centimetres of the ball had not crossed the line. So there's no argument to be had, right? The entire ball has to cross the line.
Unless you're Jose Mourinho, who almost certainly would have argued that it should have been a goal.
The entire ball did not cross the line. Here's my argument. Liverpool are unlucky in that before goal line technology, that just would have been given because it looked like it was over the line.
Oh, at 100%.
They would have had a goal by optical illusion.
And the only thing that I would say might be an extenuating circumstance is just that it's at City. And so maybe they're less inclined to make that risky call. But I would say they are really unlucky because not just for that 1 centimeter, but because when Stones...
1.12.
When Stones does get that foot to it and does end up clearing it, he clears it by megging Mohamed Salah. Not a negative thing on Salah, like he's just trying to crash and maybe
Salah's
make
just
a play.
Like doing a star jump at it, right?
But if that's 1 inch either way or 2 inches either way, that hits off Salah's leg and goes in the goal. So it really is a fortunate sequence for John Stones. And this is the one that I was saying earlier that I was inclined to think it was probably Ederson's fault, that maybe he didn't shout, maybe he didn't have the positioning right. But he comes out. It's a great ball in from Salah to Sadio Mane, who shoots it, hits the post. That's why Ederson's out in the first place. After the game, John Stones said, nope, he gave me a shout. He said it was his ball. I just kind of made a play on it, thought I had it. And to be honest, I understand that. That I think if you see that he's got Sadio Mane on his left, he sees him in the peripheral. Maybe Ederson mishandles it. Maybe he slides into his own goal. You just got to kick it clear.
Yep.
Either way, I think before Ederson's even shouting, Stones is kicking.
I would argue if your goalkeeper calls for it, you have to get out of the way and let him do it. And I could sit here and argue that, but I also know that at least 10 times in the past year, I have been in that exact situation, and I've just thought, safety first, I know I can get rid of this, let's do it.
It is one of those... It's
like a panic override. It's like a fight or flight thing.
But it's also one of those things in soccer. There's a few of these. I'm not going to try to think of them on the fly. But there are a few things where, John Stones there probably makes the wrong decision, but then for every time he does that, there's another time where he leaves that ball, Sadio Mane runs through and just gets a poke to it, and then Mohamed Salah taps it home, and then everybody's like, John Stones, you got him. That's what an English captain is supposed to do. You make that play. You be decisive, and you're kind of in trouble no matter what.
Yeah.
Except he wasn't here.
And a man who maybe should not have been on the field for 2/3 of the game is a man who was very, very good. It's Vincent Kompany, who had that we've watched it a lot of times now, really nasty tackle on Mohamed Salah after John Stones plays him a terrible, terrible, terrible pass.
Maybe because I think this happens before. It definitely happens before Liverpool equalize. So I wonder if he was like, "Look, I shouldn't be on the field right now. I'm going to give you all a goal. We'll make it 1-1. Everything's okay."
I give Roberto a freebie.
That's why he switched off.
So the ball is loose. Kompany knows he's not going to get to it before Mohamed Salah does. Kompany goes in with his left foot very dangerously off the floor. After rewatching it, my interpretation is that if Mohamed Salah didn't hurdle Vincent Kompany's leg, he could have sustained a really nasty injury. To me, that's dangerous play by Vincent Kompany.
I would agree.
Much as I love him, probably should have been sent off.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the thing that saved him here is that from the referee's point of view, from where he was on the field, it looks like, he's sliding in, and then he does sort of get the ball in the sense that Salah...
He gets it with his butt.
Yeah, exactly. So like the tackle does kind of block the ball. It stops the run from Salah, and maybe if you're the official, you see that and think like, it's just a sliding challenge in. Salah hurdles him. Yeah. We've seen those sequences before. But in reality, I think if you watch it, it's Kompany in a split second recognizing, I'm not going to win this ball. I just got to kind of get the man. And Salah is...
Oh, you think it's that premeditated?
No, I mean, I don't think it's like... Because I guess that would be premeditated.
I think it's like, I'm not going to get the ball, but I'm going to try as hard as possible to do it anyway.
I think it's the raised leg is what does it for me. And that's why I say it's a split second, and it's not a like, I'm going to have to do something, so I'm going to make a play. I think it's just like, I'm not going to get this, leg goes up. And so that makes it harder for Mohamed Salah to get over, so he has to hurdle. And I think that does make it look worse when you see those replays. So I think Kompany knows what he's doing, and for me, it should have been a red card. I was also...
The rule is if it's dangerous, it's a red, right?
I was also convinced that it was maybe even a last man situation.
So it's a denial of goal scoring opportunity.
That's what Jurgen Klopp was arguing in the post-match, because it's John Stones plays this ball, it's a loose ball. To his credit, as soon as he plays it, he's like, oh no, and is immediately sprinting back. And I think you have convinced me, we talked about this a little bit before we recorded, that I think John Stones is probably able to put on enough pressure that you can't say like Salah was definitely in on goal.
It's at least Salah versus Stones and Ederson.
So I don't think it's denial of a goal scoring opportunity or last man, but I do think it's reckless and dangerous and could have been a red card. I think it probably should have been.
All right. Did he get a yellow in the end?
He did get a yellow.
He did? Mm-hmm. Okay. So was it Anthony Taylor? Wasn't the thing if he hasn't given a red card this year? So I guess that's just the way the referee goes, right? Maybe, I know Vincent Kompany studies up. He may know that, hey, I could get away with something on the edge here. Yeah. Given Anthony Taylor's record.
That's the way the red card doesn't crumble, I guess.
Anything else to add on this game?
Just that it was such an enjoyable game. And again, not even just that it was like beautiful football from start to finish, but just that...
That was heart-pounding.
It was, but that's it. Like, we're both neutrals. We don't really have a vested interest in either one of these teams, but we were really into it. It was one of those games where there was 5 minutes of extra time, and we were both like, yes, 5 more minutes of it. But with all that said, if Liverpool won this 2-1, I'd be like, yeah, they deserved it. And if City win it 2-1, I'm like, yeah, they deserved it. It works both ways. It was that well played of a game and that well managed of a game.
One final thing I didn't... I always ask you anything else, just to catch anything. One thing.
Pedro, anything else from you?
So Sergio Aguero's goal,
cool.
Alisson should maybe think about how close he is to his near post.
Good point. I forgot about that.
He does leave, and I think Lovren gives him a look at like, how did that go inside the near post, Alisson?
Yeah. And I think it's just really, really well done again from Sergio Aguero. That first touch sets them up for the second one. And I think if you're a goalkeeper, there's just that weird inclination to just assume, it's going back across to that far post, so I'll cheat a little bit and lean one way, and because he's leaning, it goes over that right shoulder.
Okay, and here's my final take on this game. I think it's a great Premier League game in that there was just enough tactical stuff for us to sink our teeth into. But just enough of that weird...
He says it's worth 40 minutes into a show.
Yeah, right. Weird. I did say before this, let's not do 40 minutes on this game.
Whatever.
Weird, rough and tumble Premier League stuff, and then openness and controversy and touches of skill and genius and all that sort of stuff. It had a little bit of everything.
Yes.
Yeah. That's my movie review of this game.
And with that...
4.5 stars.
I would give it that too. And I would say that with that also, I know Liverpool fans will be incredibly disappointed, as they should be. For a neutral in terms of the title race, I am kind of okay with the result because I want this to continue. Really, when is the last time there was a final game really matters? Even final 2 games really matter. And I would like this season to come down to that margin because I think these two teams are so exciting and entertaining to watch that I really like the idea of them being pushed on all fronts up until that final game of the season.
Here's my weird counter to that is I think there's so much nervousness around Liverpool's title challenge that actually the 10-point lead would have made it feel more like a title race. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there's still that element of nervousness. And now the 4-point lead, I guess it still feels more like a title race.
I'm guessing they would have rather had the 10-point lead.
Yeah, of course. But you know what I'm saying? Now it's almost too close for comfort.
Oh, yeah.
For neutrals, weirdly.
I would say
I may be putting my own stuff on this.
You may be putting your own stuff on that. But then again, I may be putting my own stuff on this.
And I'm someone who was very young when Liverpool used to win the league all the time. So it's almost like I've been waiting for that Liverpool win the league comeback.
And I happily don't remember those days.
It kind of feels like it might not happen, even though they're 4 points clear.
I mean, it was very weird for me, given my rooting interest, to end this game being like, I kind of want Liverpool to equalize. I did not ever think that I would say that, but I did. They did not, which means that Liverpool still top of the table.
4 points clear.
54 points, 4 points clear. Goal difference level with Man City. So again, it could be a very close title race, which is not something Liverpool fans will want to hear, but I think neutrals will be okay with.
And we're going to take a Premier League break this weekend, right? It's the FA Cup third round, so no Premier League games for a little while. Good news for Liverpool, no African Cup of Nations in the winter. It's been moved to the summer. It's also been taken out of Cameroon, and we don't know where it's going to go. But essentially, they're not going to lose Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah, Naby Keita.
That's a big one.
That would have been huge for Liverpool's season.
Our friend, Adam Snavely, I remember the tweet exactly, but it was like the assassination of Naby Keita by the coward Jurgen Klopp. I believe is what he tweeted. Is that what it was?
He essentially thinks Keita should have played in this game.
I mean, there's an argument to be made because to your point earlier, there was no midfield sub.
Of course, there was Naby Keita.
Yeah.
My apologies to Naby Keita.
I mean, was he on the bench?
Yes.
Okay, so then it's just,
I think
it would have been a sub that would have allowed them to change things back, maybe. So
should have gone back to that 4-3-3.
There we go. There we go. Maybe that's the mistake.
We should move on from this game, right?
I suppose we should.
Okay.
Should we talk about any more unused subs first?
No. I thought you were serious.
I can tell by the dead look in your eye.
Neither team changed their goalkeepers. Let's talk about Christian Pulisic. We did 20 minutes on Christian Pulisic.
Let's do another 20.
To Chelsea yesterday. After we published, there was that Maurizio Sarri clip where
he said, I hate Christian Pulisic. I don't want him on the team.
That's how someone on this show retweeted Sarri's quote with the comment, oof.
Yeah. It wasn't a great comment. I stand by that. That, like, just clean up the translation a little bit. I understand he's not a native speaker. If you're the person transcribing... No, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about the person transcribing it.
Oh,
because
I see.
When you leave that single quote out there, and again, this is an important reminder for the world we live in today, read the whole story, read the whole article, watch the whole video. But that initial quote of, like, I didn't know anything about Pulisic until yesterday, that's that headline quote. And that sounds really bad, but when you read it within context...
Yeah.
Not bad at all.
Isn't it? I didn't know anything about Pulisic yesterday.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That was the first quote.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like if you let that stand, that's the first thing I read was I didn't know anything about Pulisic yesterday, and that sounds like I didn't know who Pulisic was.
Yes, so that's the way it's like reverberated around American soccer fandom, which is a psychological state I'd like to talk about.
It is.
First, let's clear up what he actually meant, just for anyone who's confused right now. Mauricio Sarri meant the transfer went through yesterday. I didn't know the transfer was going through yesterday.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, they asked me a month ago. I said, like, yes, he's a good player.
My opinion was positive. That's my opinion of the player about 1 month ago. My opinion was positive. And today I have known that the deal is done, but I didn't know anything. Yeah. So that's obviously all like second language stuff. But his essential point is, I'm not in charge of the transfers. I don't do the transfers. But they showed me Pulisic. I gave the thumbs up. Great, right? And then he's saying, I'm dealing with a game every 3 days here. I'll think about Pulisic next summer. Right now, I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
That's all there is to it. There's no need for American soccer fans to worry that Maurizio Sarri will not be welcoming Christian Pulisic.
I agree entirely. I would say credit to many of our listeners or many of our followers on Twitter who did respond like, well, I think he meant this, I think he meant this. So there's rational response there. I would also say credit to NBC Sports because they showed this clip. They cut straight to Robbie Mustoe, and his entire point was just that's modern football. I'm quoting him there. I'm not saying football. Don't worry. But that was his point, is that modern football is we sign the players, we bring them in. If the coach likes them, we hope that works out. And if not, then play them anyway.
It's worth looking into the situation at Chelsea where Maurizio Sarri does not get involved in transfers. We didn't really know this maybe as well as we could have, but apparently this is a thing, even from his time at Napoli. It's just not a thing he ever gets into.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
He kind of lets the board do it, right? But the interesting thing for me at Chelsea is there is no director of football. There is no technical director. Marco Emiliano, is it Elimano or Emiliano? Emanalo, excuse me. Marco Emanalo quit in 2017. They haven't had a director of football since then. And the person who comes closest is a Chelsea director. Her name is Marina Granovskaya, who's essentially just a long-term employee of Roman Abramovich.
Yeah.
And I think she may be a sort of Ed Woodward type person in that she's not really a football person, business person.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting to me. I'd love to know who is making these transfer decisions. It's obviously not Maurizio Sarri. There's not a director of football. So who's making the decisions at Chelsea?
I mean, yeah, that's a great question, one that I'm sure they don't want you to know. I would say I am curious how long Maurizio Sarri has had the policy of I don't care who we sign, because it feels like that's an okay policy to have when you're winning and you have a lot of good players. I would wonder if maybe, say, things take a turn and he doesn't get certain investment, if he then does go well, but I didn't get who I wanted, and we didn't reinforce that much. So, I should have been given the players.
But it's also smart in some ways, because then you can't be blamed for the signings.
That's what led me down that path, is like, is that the case? Or will the board be like, yeah, but we signed people, you should have done better? Like, it's a really slippery slope. Again, as Robbie Mustoe said, it's modern football.
Can we talk about the American soccer fandom panic that this Maurizio Sarri quote caused? I really think there's something to this. I think we're so used to things not going well that American soccer fans in general, and maybe media, are not prepared for a player the size of Christian Pulisic and a move the size of Pulisic from Dortmund to Chelsea for 64 million euros. I think this is the biggest thing we've ever dealt with, certainly in terms of a fee, possibly in terms of a move.
I agree for the most part. What the thing that I would change is, like, I go back to when, let me finish before you disagree with me, all right? So I would say, what? There we go. I would say going back to like when Tim Howard goes to Manchester United. I think everybody was like, this is amazing. I remember being at the game when like he made some saves and all the New York fans were pointing at the United fans and everybody was celebrating. And Clint Dempsey going to Tottenham. I think I didn't have this like, oh, I hope he does well. I was like, heck yeah, he's going to tear it up. And I think the difference is it's not American soccer fans always. I think it's American soccer fans now after the year we've had.
That's true.
Like 2 years ago, I think everyone's just like, this is amazing. I'm so excited. I hope it works out. And I think because of the way it's gone lately, that's the big difference for me. Is that we're so kind of beaten down as American fans that it's just like, ugh, I hope this works. It might not.
To dig deeper into this, I don't mean this as a counter argument to what you just said about Howard and Dempsey. I think of it more as like digging down to the next layer. I think American goalkeepers are a weird exception where we've just had so many successful Premier League goalkeepers that we're used to it. We're not nervous about goalkeepers playing in the Premier League.
No,
right?
Yeah, true.
And then I think the Clint Dempsey. I'm glad you mentioned Clint Dempsey, because that era was kind of the weird turning point as well, right? Because there was suddenly this year where we lost Clint Dempsey, who was at Tottenham, and we had a big name player at a big name club. Then we lost Michael Bradley at Roma, because suddenly both of them got tempted back to Major League Soccer where there was all this money. I still say for those players, make that money. Live a happy life. If you're like happy to settle in Toronto and Seattle, go for it. There's no blame on those players. But it did rob us of having high-profile players at high-profile teams for an extended period of time. And so we've almost got used to not... Like, it's almost like we don't deserve it. Like, we've convinced ourselves we don't deserve it. Christian Pulisic deserves to be at Chelsea. We deserve Christian Pulisic at Chelsea.
Yeah.
Everybody be confident in Christian Pulisic and enjoy it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's my message to America.
And I would also say, the final thing I would say about it, and I like that message, is that it also is representative of maybe the talent gap that existed, that it was sort of like, usually it wouldn't be a big deal. Lots of countries have their favorite player, their best player ever, move to a lesser league or move back to the domestic league, and usually that's compensated for by other players kind of filling that space. And there's a
generation gap, right?
Yeah, when Shevchenko retires, there's 3 new Ukrainian attackers that are really exciting and people kind of have eyes on. With the United States, once Dempsey and Bradley are kind of gone, it was a big drop-off for a long time. And then we started to get Pulisic at Dortmund and McKinney at Schalke, and it goes up to that next level. But it's been a while since it was that next level.
Next level.
And so I'm with you that because it's been so long, it feels that much more significant.
So speaking of the whole new generation of players, a thing that's become a bit of a big story recently is also that PA Classics, which is Christian Pulisic's development academy team, which he left when he was 16, will not be receiving, and apparently will not be even requesting, any solidarity payments.
Yeah.
So it's been calculated by people have basically done back of the napkin calculations that PA Classics, if American teams receive solidarity payments, would have got about $500,000 out of the Pulisic transfer.
Take us to school, Daryl. For people who are new, for people who don't quite know what that means, what is a solidarity payment?
So I don't want to get too detailed because I'm not fully confident in all the details, but essentially what happens in all of world soccer, more or less.
20 minutes you got.
20 minutes, all right.
Fill that space.
You're going to regret this.
I really am, because you could probably do it.
When a transfer happens, 5% of the transfer, a fee equivalent to 5% of the transfer, I don't know if it's cut off from that or in addition to it, is then shared amongst all the teams, the youth teams, that helped develop that player. These are called solidarity payments. So PA Classics for developing Pulisic up to the age of 16 or so would have been due some of that money. That obviously would fund a lot of activity at PA Classics. For example, Tyler Adams, I don't think New York Red Bulls will get any money. That's weird because he's got an intra-organisation, right? That's a very weird example.
Well, I would say the counter non-MLS one was like the story came out of, I think, Pogba's transfer, that then they were like his very basic youth club was able to like not go bankrupt, and instead they got new facilities because of that amount of money.
There's lots of money pours into clubs in this way.
Yep.
There is a case before the Court of Arbitration for Sport right now where Crossfire, which is one of DeAndre Yedlin's youth teams, is essentially requesting the money from the Yedlin to Tottenham move. This could be the thing that reverses course and makes it so that American teams start receiving solidarity payments, start requesting and expecting to receive solidarity payments. I think even Don Garber,
that's
Commissioner of MLS, came out, I think you mentioned it before, but at MLS Cup, he was talking about how, hey, if we're going to be a selling league, and even that was a weird turning point for Don Garber to say that, right? We need these solidarity payments to come in because we're missing out on a bunch of money, right?
Yeah, and my hope, I'm not saying this is the case, and I hope I'm not wrong, but my hope is that that's Don Garber reading the writing on the wall. Yeah. Maybe this case is about to be concluded, it's about to be decided, and he thinks eventually this is going to be overruled or upheld or whatever people want it to be, so that solidarity payments come through. So it's better to be on the right side of history in this case.
I'd even say, as well as reading the writing on the wall, he's reading the numbers on the spreadsheet.
There's that too,
right? Because now American soccer has a lot of outgoing transfers.
Yeah, true.
MLS has a lot of outgoing transfers for a lot of money, and it's better for MLS teams to take a piece of that money,
especially
for
when
the development teams.
Yeah, exactly. Because especially when you've got development academies and MLS2 teams and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then it makes more sense to want to get as much money as you possibly can, because I do think clubs are starting, or like countries as a whole, FAs are starting to look at the United States and see players as value buys. You can buy somebody like Tyler Adams for way less than you'd be able to buy a young, promising English midfielder who's going to charge around and make plays. Yeah,
and that's fair. Again, I think Tyler Adams is a weird example because it's all that Red Bulliness.
And also because you love him?
Also because I love him. Yeah, I am not ashamed
of all that Red Bulliness.
Not ashamed of my Tyler Adams love. If you want to get real deep on this solidarity payment stuff, I would recommend following Mickey Turner on Twitter. We'll put the link to Mickey Turner's Twitter in the show notes. He's following that Court of Arbitration for Sport case. So as soon as the decision is announced, it was expected October 31st. You'll probably hear about it first on Mickey Turner's Twitter feed. There's also a really old Top Draw Soccer show where I talked to Will Parchment about solidarity payments and training compensation for like an hour. So we got really deep into it there.
You sure did. I'm slightly concerned. What if Mickey Turner is just sitting in front of his computer, staring at it, waiting to get an update, and has been since late October? I hope he's okay. Someone check on him.
He's busy. I think he practices law as well, so he's got all sorts going on.
Daryl, send him a text or something once the show is done. Let's make sure he's okay.
Just check he's not staring at his screen.
We'll send him some Uber Eats or something so he can at least find sustenance.
Well, let's promise this. When we get the decision from the Court of Arbitration for Sport, we'll try and get Mickey on the show and we'll talk to him in detail about what's going to happen and what has happened. All right.
And hopefully we'll get him out in the sunlight too.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. When I say that, it means the show's coming to an end.
There we are. Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. If you'd like to join us again tomorrow, we'll be back with a listener question special. Until then, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.